I'm going to weld this evening. I'm going to be using, I'll show you what I'm going to use. Hold on. These. Now, E60 11. E60 11 size, wait, there. Let me get this up. E60 11. E60 11 size 3/32 welding rods. And here we go. Now these are Vulcans. I got these at Harbor Freight Tools for about $10 for this box. E60 11 electrodes. The size is 3/32. That's this right here. It tells you the current, 40 to 90 amps AC DC plus. They're 14 inches long. They're all position welding rods. The tasks: sheet metal, pipe welding, steel with contaminants on it, and there you go. There's the welding rods I'm going to use. Let me show you something. I'm going to put this back over here. I have down here, I have my brush to brush off the coating of flux after it's on the welded metal, on the metal I'm going to melt other steel onto, and the weld chipper to chip it off, the weld chipper to chip off the flux coating that comes on the molten metal after you know, when you're welding it, after it's welded. So got that. Okay. Here we go. I'm going to weld on this piece of steel. I'm going to weld a molten weld streak down through here, and I'm going to let me show you something. These rods right here, you have to hold these rods at like a very slanted angle. Okay, these rods, you have to hold these rods. You have to hold these rods at a very slanted angle, like this or this, before they'll weld. Because the hotter this rod gets, the easier it melts. For some reason, when you hold it like this, more upward, it doesn't get that hot and it doesn't melt that good. But when you hold the rod like this, it gets hotter and it melts easier, which makes it easier to weld. This is an E60 11 3/32 size welding rod, like I said, and I'll show you the welder I'm going to use. This is a Harbor Freight 80 amp. This is a Harbor Freight 80 amp DC welder. You plug this welding machine into a standard US 120 AC volt outlet. The plug on it's like the plug it goes in a you know, a toaster or a fan. You know, it's just simple standard plug. And I'm going to turn the amps all the way up to 80 amps right here. That controls the amps. This light will flash on and off and beep when the rod gets stuck. When it starts overheating, this thing will start beeping. This is an inverter welder. This is an inverter welder. It takes AC voltage and turns it into DC amps and welds. This is electrode positive. This one holds a welding rod. This goes to the clamp that holds the welding rod, and this is the negative ground. So you just clamp this to the piece of metal that you're going to connect the welding rod to and melt the welding rod on. It's okay. And right here tells you about it. It's even got a little fan here in the back to cool it off. You hear it running. So let's get started. I'm going to aim the camera down. You can see it. Get these wires out of the way. And this is the helmet I'm going to use. This helmet is like a newer type of helmet that when a bright light hits it, this helmet's electronically operated off of low voltage. I think it just uses a small battery, like one of them little flat disc batteries, nickel cadmium or whatever they're called. I don't know the correct name of the batteries, but it operates this part, and when the bright light hits it, it makes this turn dark, and that way you don't have to keep lifting it up to see where you're sticking the welding rod. So just turn this down like that, unloosen it. Lift it up, and there we go. And I'm going to aim the camera down so you can clearly see this. And I will ground this . This is a hard type of job, but you might fall in love with it if you like it. And here we go. Okay, let's take a look at it. And here we are. Check this out. So there's a weld, there's a molten metal that I just welded down, and it's not really right. It's it's not that it's not right. What it is the reason it's beaded up like that and piled up is because, let's start off like this. These welding rods I got, they're not Lincoln, okay? They're Vulcan rods, and they're a cheaper form of welding rod. And these welding rods do not have very good, what is it? How do you say it? They don't have very good connection, which means they don't. They're cheaper, and the electricity doesn't pass through them that well, and so it's harder for the electrical current to get through them to melt them, because they're cheaper type welding rods. Now, if I would have been using Lincoln welding rods, the same kind, Lincoln E60 11 3/32 size rods would have literally melted deep into this metal, because they're a much better welding rod, much higher quality arc welding rod than the Vulcans that I'm using. So, okay, now, excuse me, sorry folks, but now what I'm going to do, let me get this other piece of steel. I'm going to weld this to an A, like this. This piece of metal to this, like that. I'm going to weld along the top right here. Let me get this straight. I'm going to weld along the top right here. I'm going to weld these two pieces of metal together. I'm going to weld along the top right here. And this metal on top is bare, so the electricity should pass through it a lot easier, and it should melt better. And plus, the edges of the metal get hotter because the heat has nowhere to go. When you get metal hot and heat spreads out through the metal, when the heat reaches the end of the metal is the hottest part, because the heat doesn't have nowhere else to go. It has to stop, and that's why the metal gets hotter at the ends. So I'm going to weld this in an A like this. I'm going to weld this in an A like that, and then we'll take a look at it after I'm done. Wait. You want to keep these wires away from the heat, because these wires are easy to melt. Hold on just a second. I'm going to have to put on my glove for this one. Hold on. Okay. Now, I'm going to still start with this rod. This rod's already hot, so it'd be best to start with this rod. Okay, I see, you can see it's in an A shape. So There's the two pieces of metal. Wait a minute, let me grab something real quick. Let's try this for a second so you can see. Right here's the two pieces of metal. Right here's the two pieces of metal. Piece of metal. Okay, so now it's stuck. Okay, so now it's stuck together. Now I'm gonna run it. I'm gonna put that molten metal down along. I'm gonna put that molten metal down along the top of it here, and finish penetrating it together into one piece. Hold on, I have to get a new rod. That rod has got too much flux broken off. Okay, so here's the new rod. Here's the new rod. Let's try the brand new rod. See, the end of it is good. There's no flux broken off. No flux broken off. Here's the rod I was just using. See where the flux is going off of it? See where the flux is going off this rod? It won't melt like that. It'll just keep sticking and keep sticking when you try to weld with it. It won't melt. That flux that you see is broken off. That's this part here. Not that part, but this part. That flux has to be on. That flux has to be on this before it'll melt, or otherwise it'll just keep sticking and bonding to the metal. These are very, very cheap rods, so don't be surprised. It happens. Every now and then you'll accidentally buy something you never used before, and you find out it's not that high quality. Well, okay, here we go. Let me get it. Make sure it's picking me up. Go again. I think that'll do it, man. Alright. Let me get this hot helmet off. Let me aim the camera up. Wait a minute. So check this out. Watch this. It done a little bit better this time. But check this out. So hold on. It's looking good compared to the first one. And here you go. Check it out. Wait a minute. Much better than the first one I done. Looks a whole lot more, you know, more trustable. As you can see, let me get it closer into the camera when you see it. So, you know, it went a whole lot smoother than the first one. It's a little bit more smoother, only because this weld was welded hotter. Let me kind of aim the camera up a little bit to take stress off of me. Whoa. So see, there you go. Much better weld. Although it didn't really penetrate very deep, but it was better than the first. So I can get as close as I can to the camera so you can see this. I'm holding it by the ground clamp. So the rod melted pretty good that time. The welding rod melted pretty good that time. And you can see what it looks like. One more at the bottom. And there you have it, folks. A Harbor Freight 80 amp AC volts to DC amps welder. I don't know how many volts that the rod clamp has on it. The rod clamp being this part right here. This holds a welding rod. And I don't know how many volts this has on it. I know it's not many. It's not a very dangerous, amount of volts. But if you were standing in water, that's something you don't want to do. You do not want to be standing in water and use one of these, because you could get you could get electrocuted. Don't ever mess with this electrical welding stuff and puddles of water, or when it's raining. Don't do it. Don't do it. So here it is. Here's the clamp, and this is made out of plastic. So this whole setup, this welding machine is not meant for long duration use at one time, like probably past 10 minutes, because this is plastic, and if after so long this part would get hot. If this was a high amperage welder, like it went up to 200 amps, 300 amps, this would get so hot that it might melt that plastic. So it's not, an only 80 amp DC welder, it doesn't go, it doesn't get that hot, because it doesn't put off enough amps, to get that hot. So at least they take it for hours on 80 amps, and you have to be constantly going with it, and this doesn't have a duty cycle that long. There it is, Harbor Freight 80 amp DC welder. Doesn't work very well with Vulcan 3/32 size E60 11 type arc welding rods. Turn it down, turn it off. Disconnect these. These plug in and twist. And you just take them out. On the other side, this welding machine's only about the size of a child's shoebox. That's how big it is. It's not very big. It's a little bitty thing. It's a very small thing. Very small welding machine. But as you can see, it will do the job. It will get it done. Again, it's what I just done with it. And that's that. And until next time, folks, till I find another thing I can videotape and show. Heidi ho, ha ha ha.